Good evening, everyone. This is Hidetada Higashi from Yamanashi Gakuin University. Today, we will introduce our research titled Low-Floor Tram as a Disruptive Innovation in Public Transportation Sector, Lessons Learned for Automotive Industry. So today, we will talk about much more about the public transportation, especially tram, not about the vehicle. But probably, we are sure that it's very important insight for automotive industry. At the beginning, I would like to tell the reason that I chose the virtual attendance. I really miss the face-to-face colloquium, and I miss everyone, the member of GERPISA and PVMI. And I love to visit Detroit, but I decided to stay with my son until 3 years old, and he is still 2 years and 10 months. So I chose at this time virtual attendance. I'm sure next year I will join the face-to-face colloquium. So let's move on to the summary of our presentation. Today, we would like to say that the low-floor tram introduced in France and globally diffused was a disruptive innovation, which was stated by Clayton Christensen for urban public transportation systems. Because there is a few reasons that was the disruptive innovation. And the first one is that performance characteristic of low-floor tram. Transport capacity and surface speed are lower than existing systems such as subway and automated guided train. So believe that tram is not suitable for large city. But at the same time, there was the new value proposition from this vehicle, low-floor tram. And it is accessible mobility for everyone and low aggression towards pedestrians and residents. At the same time, low cost that can be introduced even in small cities. So thanks to these performance characteristics and new value proposition, and low-floor trams spread to large cities as well as to smaller cities. And this was biggest one of the biggest innovation for public transportation from the barrier-free aspects. So just a brief review of the concept of disruptive innovation. And this is one of the most famous notes of innovation management done by Clayton Christensen. So just checking up the very important points. So disruptive technology brings to the market a very different value proposition. And at the same time, it underperformed established products in mainstream markets. But they have other features that few fringe customer values. So products based on disruptive technology are typically cheaper, simpler, smaller, and frequently more convenient to use. So we would like to say that the low-floor tram is very suitable with this concept. So at the beginning, we would like to introduce the brief history of the reintroduction of trams and the birth of low-floor trams in France. The history just begins around 40 years before, and just around the early 1980s. And after the World War II, in many cities, the tramway was abandoned, even in France, because of adapting to the motorization. But just after tens of a few decades of motorization, and there was so many number of the negative effect of motorization. So French government decided to revitalizing public transportation to adverse the negative effect of motorization, like traffic jam or air pollution or noise, such kind of thing. Of course, including the traffic accident. So they planned to introduce tram line as a public transportation revitalization in small and medium-sized cities. So, and the pilot city was chosen, and the city of Nantes. So they introduced a tramway in 1985. Just seeing that this reintroduction tramway, the city of Grenoble decided to introduce the tramway as well as the city of Nantes. At the beginning of the project, they tried to introduce the high floor tramway or so-called order style, like street cars. But just after the introduction of this plan, a group of local physically disabled people requested for barrier-free accessibility for them. So accepting their request, the development of low-floor tram began, and they accomplished this development project. And so low-floor tram became the public transportation in Grenoble City. So the disabled people in Grenoble City enjoy the accessible transportation. And this became very famous. And this was rapidly spread among the cities and the world. So so the physically disabled people living in the other cities, including even in Japan or US, visited the city of Grenoble to learn about this low-floor tram. So it became so famous, and even in Nantes, city of Nantes, they introduced a low-floor vehicle in the tram line in their city. So it was a kind of the trigger of the diffusion of the low-floor tram. After the introduction of the Grenoble-style LRT and the subsequent public transportation development project in France completely changed. Before the introduction of the Grenoble-style low-floor tram, many of the AGT and the subway construction project was planned in the larger city in France, like Toulouse or Lyon or Marseille or such kind of city. But many of the projects were replaced by low-floor tram. So very few number of the city introduced subway and AGT after the introduction of the Grenoble-style tram. At the same time, numbers of the smaller size city introduced the low-floor tram. So this was the history of the invention and the diffusion of the low-floor tram. The next, we would like to introduce the characteristic of low-floor tram. So biggest characteristic is accessibility. It is highly accessible mobility for everyone, not only for the wheelchair users, but also people with children, with strollers, or just ordinary people with bigger baggages. So they have difficulty to use the three-dimensional system like staircase or escalator, or so it's a bit difficult to use subway. So this highly accessible mobility means that the high convenience for everyone. At the same time, the low-floor trams construction cost is very small, and the capacity is also small, just around 10% of the subway. So it's enough for smaller city, like the population of hundreds of thousands, lower hundreds, like 1, 2, 3, or such kind of thing. And thanks to the smaller size of the vehicle, and route planning is very flexible. So small minimum radius and short distance between stations means that very complicated plan of the route, which is much more convenient for the residents. And you can find the picture of the background of this presentation that and low floor tram is very suitable for the urban design. So it became the symbol of the core of community development. So creating liveness through transit malls. And on the other hand, like high capacity system like subway or AGT is isolated from the urban design or urban planning because they operate very high speed, so a bit dangerous. So keep away from the pedestrians and residents. At the same time, they use the roadway to replace the railway. So they need to reduce the number of lanes on the roads. And so this forced to reduce the number of the cars inside the city. So what was the impact of the Grenoble-style low-floor tram? And they realized truly accessible public transportation. So everyone enjoy this value proposition without any, especially for wheelchair people, without any help, they become able to enjoy public transportation. Actually, before the introduction of the low-floor tram, and the best solution for wheelchair people was the bus with a lift. But this was benefit only to wheelchair people and take longer time for boarding. So once the wheelchair people enjoy the bus with a lift, and the other passenger needed to wait for them. But low floor tram can benefit to everyone. No one wants to just pulling up our body or baggage to higher stages. So they almost all of the people can enjoy the value proposition of the low floor tram. So this innovation became an enhancer of the transportation rights to disabled people. It became the technological enabler of transportation rights for physically disabled people. So this triggered the enhancement of the transportation rights in the French law. So the next, and we would like to briefly introduce the history of the diffusion of this innovation. So, and horizontal axis shows the year, and the vertical axis shows the population size of the city. At the beginning of the introduction of the low floor tram, and just around 400,000 residents, people with Grenoble city. And after that, there was two trends to introduce the low floor tram. One is for the larger city, and the other is the diffusion for smaller cities. So one of the smallest city which introduced low floor tram is the city of Auvergne. The resident is just around 10 to 15, and 100 to 150,000 people. And the other famous city is probably the city of Le Mans, which is very familiar with automotive industry. This is just around 200,000 residents, and the transportation of just around 18 million per year means a quarter of the residents use the LRT every day. So why this trend can be realized? Very small city can introduce the LRT. Of course, it's much cheaper than subway or AGT, but it's still very high cost. And this is because of the public transportation investment in France. It has some characteristics. At the beginning, and based on the concept of transportation rights, and the public transportation planning is conducted by local governments, not done by private company like in the case in Japan. So both of infrastructure and vehicle investment done by local governments using the transportation tax. So they invest and the private company operates. So why this style of division of labor accomplished? Because the public transportation is treated as a means of social improvement. So public transportation planning is the role of the municipality. So, and the ultimate purpose of public transportation is increasing tax revenue through attractive urban design. Through providing social welfare and providing job opportunity for everyone, we expect to have them be taxpayers. At the same time, wealthy people prefer to stay in the city with good public transportation, or modern public transportation. And so they try to attract the wealthy people. At the same time, reduction of negative externality and all of them done by local government is the biggest characteristic because no necessity to profitable. So they move on to the bigger investment for the necessity of the social change or the social improvements. So less profitable innovation can be boosted. So just summarizing the case study from the local Tram, we are sure that it was disruptive innovation from both of the technical characteristics issue and the motivation and incentive for the innovations aspects. So they were very less profitable, but socially very benefitable. And the public transportation policy done by the local government realized the bigger investment and for this innovation. And so the public sector became the bigger market or ensure the company to the value network of this innovation. So the company with more security about the profitable because the public sector can be paid. So the conclusion and implication for automotive industry because this is GERPISA and PVMI. And so today we would like to emphasize that the local government can be a gracious sponsor of innovation. So they can be an enhancer of the less profitable innovation, especially less profitable and socially benefitable. And so it's very famous that existing company, even including the automotive OEM, hardly accomplished the disruptive innovation alone because this is less profitable. But once the making partnership with the local government, they can invest for less profitable but highly socially benefitable innovation. So probably there is so many numbers of such kind of innovation like change of the energy source or autonomous or such kind of thing. So now we recommend OEMs to seek the partnership with the public sector and researchers as well. And finally, how should OEMs manage the public aspects of cars? The introduction of the low-floor tram was a kind of the introduction of public value like accessibility. So because of the drive of the case and the mass, and the automotive industry becoming more public, especially for the issue of the sharing of such kind of thing. And at the same time, hyper-aging society in developed countries like Japan, and there is a growing number of the mobility impaired people, even in developed countries. So how should OEMs contribute to accessible mobility for everyone? This would become a very important issue. This means that focusing only on product and its performance or profitability is not enough for them at this moment. Now, the OEMs should give attention to the public aspects and the public sector. That's all for today. Thank you so much.